A first-class ticket means nothing when the color of your skin doesn't match the assumptions of the wealthy. For Serafina, her dream trip to London turns into a nightmare at 30,000 feet. She's publicly accused of theft by a wealthy passenger, and, without a shred of evidence, the flight crew sides against her. They call security. She is shamed, humiliated, and dragged off the aircraft like a criminal. The entire cabin watches her go, but they have no idea who they just kicked off the plane. When her father arrives, the entire airline will be brought to its knees. The Ascendia Global Airways Sky Vault at JFK's Terminal 4 was less an airport lounge and more a cathedral to modern capitalism. It was a hushed world of brushed chrome, recessed amber lighting, and white marble. The air smelled faintly of expensive perfume and fresh espresso. This was the domain of the 1%. And then there was Serafina Washington. She was curled up in an Eames lounge chair in a quiet corner, her focus entirely on the sketchbook resting on her knees. She wore charcoal grey sweats, a vintage Art Institute of Chicago hoodie, and a pair of well-loved, paint-splattered Doc Martens. Her glorious, spiraling hair was pulled up in a messy pineapple. Beside her, a battered leather satchel overflowed with pencils and more sketchbooks. She was, to put it mildly, not the typical clientele. And she was drawing the attention of one. Mrs. Evelyn Reed, draped in a cream-colored cashmere wrap that probably cost more than Serafina's college tuition, was glaring at her from across the room. She was speaking in a loud, theatrical whisper to her husband, a pale man named Arthur, who just wanted to read his Wall Street Journal. "I just don't understand it, Arthur," Evelyn hissed, gesturing with a hand heavy with diamonds. "They let everyone in here now. It used to be exclusive. Look at her. Those clothes. She's probably using a stolen credit card to get in. It lowers the whole tone." Arthur just grunted. Serafina heard her. She'd been hearing women like Evelyn Reed her entire life. She was a 22-year-old black woman, an art student, and, incidentally, the daughter of the man who owned the airline. But she never, ever played that card. She had begged her dad, James Washington, to let her fly commercial like a normal person for her post-graduation art exhibition in London. "Just let me be Sarah," she'd pleaded, "not the CEO's daughter. I want to be anonymous." "Anonymous is fine, baby," James had replied, his voice warm over the phone. "But you're still flying in 1A. That's non-negotiable. It's the safest seat on the plane. Indulge your old man." She'd agreed. Now, that 1A ticket was the very thing causing the friction. A sleek flight attendant, the lead purser for their flight, glided over to Mrs. Reed. His name tag read, "Mark." He had a plastic, perfect smile and eyes that were professionally empty. "Mrs. Reed? Another champagne?" "Oh, Mark, you're a lifesaver," Evelyn cooed, tapping the empty flute. "It's just, I'm a little concerned about the security in here. That girl over there." She flicked her eyes toward Serafina. "She just seems so out of place. Are you sure she belongs here?" Mark's eyes followed her gaze. He assessed Serafina in a half-second. The hoodie, the hair, the color of her skin. His smile tightened. "I see what you mean, madam," he said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial murmur. "The standards have become lax. Don't you worry. I'll be lead purser on your flight, AG1 to Heathrow. I will personally ensure the first-class cabin is comfortable for our most valued guests." Evelyn Reed beamed. "You're a doll, Mark." Serafina sighed, her pencil stopping on the page. She snapped her sketchbook shut, slid it into her bag, and stood up. She grabbed her satchel and her carry-on roller, and without a glance at them, walked towards the boarding gate for Ascendia Global Flight 1. Mark watched her go, a small, superior smirk on his face. He caught Evelyn's eye and gave her a subtle, reassuring nod. The girl was probably in coach and just wandered into the wrong lounge. She was someone else's problem now. Or so he thought. Boarding the flagship A350 was a serene affair. Mark stood at the door, greeting passengers by name. "Welcome back, Mr. Davies. Good to see you, Mrs. Reed. Mr. Reed. Your usual 2B and 2C. Evelyn Reed, having pre-boarded, was already settling in, accepting a glass of Krug champagne from another attendant. As she stowed her Gucci tote in the overhead, she looked toward the front of the cabin, and her blood froze. There, in seat 1A, the flagship throne seat of the entire aircraft, was the girl from the lounge. Serafina was already settled in, headphones on, sipping a humble ginger ale and sketching the view from the window. Evelyn's face contorted in disbelief. She marched down the aisle to Mark, who was helping another passenger. "Mark!" she hissed, yanking on his sleeve. "Mrs. Reed, is everything all right?" "Her," Evelyn pointed, not bothering to be discreet. The whole front cabin looked. "She's in 1A. That cannot be right. That's a $15,000 ticket. There has been a mistake." Mark's professional mask slipped. He looked at Serafina, who was oblivious to the commotion, lost in her music. He then looked at his passenger manifest. His eyes widened slightly. Washington, S, was indeed listed for 1A. He'd assumed S. Washington was Stephen or Susan, one of their usual corporate clients. Not this. "Ma'am, the manifest says she's ticketed for that seat," he said quietly, trying to move Evelyn back to her own. "I don't care what the manifest says. She probably used a stolen card. Or maybe... Oh, Mark. Maybe she's one of those influencers the airline gives freebies to. It's disgusting. She'll be filming herself and disturbing us all the entire flight." Serafina finally noticed the staring. She pulled off her headphones. "Is there a problem?" she asked, her voice calm and polite. Mark stepped forward, his smarmy smile back in place. "Miss," he began, his tone dripping with condescension. Mrs. Reed was just surprised. "It's a very popular seat." "I'm aware," Serafina said, not rising to the bait. "I'm just trying to settle in." "Mark," Evelyn said suddenly, her voice high and panicked. "My bracelet. My diamond tennis bracelet. It's gone." The cabin fell silent. "My bracelet," Evelyn repeated, louder, clutching her wrist. "It was right here. I had it on in the lounge. That girl. She brushed past me when she left the lounge. She was in a hurry. She must have taken it." The accusation hung in the pressurized air, toxic and heavy. Serafina's blood ran cold. "What? I didn't go anywhere near you." "You did!" Evelyn shrieked. "You walked right past my chair. You probably saw it. You knew I was in first class. You saw your opportunity." Mark immediately stepped between them, but his body language was all wrong. He wasn't defending Serafina. He was shielding Evelyn. "Ma'am, please," he said to Evelyn, then turned to Serafina. His eyes were no longer professional. They were cold, accusatory. "Miss, this is a very serious allegation," he said, his voice hard. "It's a false allegation," Serafina said, her heart hammering. She could feel every eye in the cabin on her. The man in 1B, the couple in 2D and 2E, all of them, staring, judging. "I didn't steal anything. I'm just trying to go to London." "She has it in her bag," Evelyn shouted, pointing a trembling, diamond-ringed finger. "That filthy bag! Look in her bag, Mark! I demand you search her bag!" This was it. The nightmare. The humiliation she had always dreaded, the one her father had warned her about, the one she thought her politeness and quiet dignity could prevent. "You're not searching my bag," Serafina said, her voice shaking but firm. "Not without a warrant or a reason." And she said so isn't a reason. Mark's face darkened. He saw a problematic, disruptive passenger. He saw what Evelyn Reed had told him to see. "Miss," he said, puffing up his chest, "we have a passenger who has reported a theft of a very valuable item. You are the person she identified. If you refuse to cooperate, I will have to assume you are guilty. We cannot take off with a thief on board." "I am not a thief," Serafina said, her voice rising, tears of pure rage and humiliation stinging her eyes. "That's what they all say," Evelyn sneered from behind Mark. "Check her bag, or get her off this plane." Mark looked at Serafina. He saw her defiant, tear-filled eyes. He saw her hoodie. He saw an easy problem to solve. He made his choice. "Miss, I am asking you one last time to cooperate. If you refuse, I will be forced to call airport security and have you removed from my aircraft." "Then call them," Serafina whispered, her entire body trembling. "Call them." Mark nodded, a grim satisfaction on his face. He turned and walked to the galley, picking up the interphone. "This is Purser Mark on AG1. We have a non-compliant passenger in 1A, refusing a search after an accusation of theft. I need security at the gate immediately. We are refusing her transport." The next 10 minutes were the longest of Serafina's life. The cabin door was still open, the jet bridge connected. The normal sounds of boarding, the gentle classical music, the welcome announcements, the clinking of glasses, had all stopped. The first-class cabin was a tomb, silent save for Evelyn Reed's performative, muffled sobs into a linen handkerchief. "My grandmother gave me that bracelet," she whispered loudly to her husband, who was patting her shoulder awkwardly. "It's priceless." Serafina just sat in 1A, her hands clenched in her lap. She felt frozen. Every passenger who walked past the first-class cabin on their way to business or coach stared. They saw the beautiful, weeping rich woman. They saw the stern, important-looking flight attendant. And they saw the young black girl in the hoodie, sitting in the best seat on the plane, looking like she'd been caught. The whispers started. "She stole something. Can you believe it? In first class. The nerve. She doesn't look like she belongs up here anyway." Serafina put her headphones back on, but she didn't play any music. She just needed to block out the world. She squeezed her eyes shut, trying to disconnect. She thought about her dad. He'd be so angry. Not at her, but at the situation. He'd want to fix it. She resisted the urge to call him. This was exactly the kind of situation she'd sworn she would handle herself. Calling her CEO father felt like admitting defeat. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction. The sound of heavy boots on the jet bridge floor cut through her thoughts. 2 Port Authority police officers appeared at the door, followed by an Ascendia Global Gate supervisor, a woman named Chloe who looked stressed. Mark met them, his expression one of grave seriousness. "Thank you for coming, officers," Mark said, his voice full of false sincerity. "This is the situation. Mrs. Reed, our platinum executive passenger in 2B, has had a diamond bracelet stolen. She identified this passenger," he gestured to Serafina, "as the one who took it. This passenger is now refusing to have her bag searched and is becoming disruptive." "I am not disruptive," Serafina said, standing up, her voice cracking. "I just said you can't search my personal property based on a lie." The lead officer, Officer O'Malley, sighed. He'd seen this 100 times. "Ma'am," he said, his voice tired. "This is a private aircraft. The captain has the right to refuse service to anyone. They've made a report. We don't want to arrest you for theft. The airline is just asking you to deplane. If you come with us quietly, we can sort this out in the terminal." "Sort what out?" Serafina pleaded, looking at the gate supervisor, Chloe. "There's nothing to sort out. I didn't take anything. She's lying." Chloe, the supervisor, looked torn. She glanced at the manifest in her hand. "Washington, S." She then looked at the furious, red-faced Mrs. Reed. "Miss Washington," Chloe said, trying to be gentle. "The flight is going to be delayed. The purser has made the decision. We need you to please, just come with us. We can put you on the next flight to London. We can talk about this inside." The next flight. They were treating her like a common criminal. "No," Serafina said, a new, cold resolve settling in. "I am a ticketed passenger in this seat. I have done nothing wrong. I am not moving." Mark stepped forward. "Officers, she is now refusing to deplane. She is delaying a 300-passenger international flight." Officer O'Malley's partner, a younger, more aggressive officer, unclipped the radio from his shoulder. "Ma'am, you are now interfering with the operations of a flight crew. That is a federal offense. I am ordering you to take your belongings and come with us. Do not make this harder than it needs to be." Tears streamed down Serafina's face. She looked at the faces staring at her, Mrs. Reed's triumphant smirk, Mark's cold, procedural indifference, the other passengers' mix of pity and disgust. She was broken. There was no winning. Slowly, deliberately, she zipped up her satchel. She pulled her roller bag from the closet. She didn't look at anyone. She just walked. "That's right, run away," Evelyn Reed muttered, just loud enough for her to hear. As Serafina reached the door, she paused and looked directly at Mark. "You are making a terrible mistake," she said, her voice low and shaking with a fury he mistook for fear. "Have a good evening, miss," Mark said dismissively, turning away to gesture to the other flight attendants to prepare the door for closure. Serafina stepped out of the aircraft and onto the jet bridge. The two officers flanked her, not touching her, but their presence was an imprisonment. They were walking her off the plane. The walk of shame. She felt like her life was over. They walked the length of the silent, carpeted jet bridge. It felt like a mile. As they reached the gate area, the passengers waiting for the next flight stared, wondering what this girl could have done to be personally escorted off a plane by the police. Chloe, the gate supervisor, led them to a small, glass-walled office to the side of the gate. "Officers, can you just wait outside for a moment? Let me talk to her." The officers nodded and took up positions by the door. Inside the office, Serafina slumped into a chair. She was shaking. "Miss Washington," Chloe said, sitting opposite her. She was a kind-looking woman in her 40s, and she looked genuinely distressed. "Listen to me. I'm not sure what happened on there, but Mark is the lead purser, and the captain backed his call. My hands are tied. They will fly without you." "He's a liar," Serafina whispered. "And that woman, she's a racist. She hated me from the moment she saw me in the lounge." "I don't doubt it," Chloe said quietly. "I've dealt with Evelyn Reed before. She's a nightmare. But she's also one of our highest revenue passengers. She spends over $500,000 a year with us. So money means she gets to accuse me of being a thief. And everyone just believes her?" "It means," Chloe said, choosing her words carefully, "that the crew is trained to de-escalate and remove the point of conflict. And you, I'm afraid, are the point of conflict." Serafina's anger was so profound, it felt like a physical weight. She was tired. Tired of fighting. Tired of being seen as a conflict. "I need to make a call," Serafina said, her voice flat. "Of course. We can get you a hotel, rebook you for the 9 a.m. flight." "I'm not calling for a hotel," Serafina said. She pulled out her phone. She had one text message, sent an hour ago. Dad, have a safe flight, baby. See you in London on Thursday. Love you. She pressed the call button. Chloe, what's your last name? Serafina asked. It's Martinez. Why? Chloe Martinez. Okay. The phone picked up on the second ring. Sarah, you're supposed to be in the air. Is everything okay? Serafina took a deep, shuddering breath. Dad, she said, and her voice broke. I'm not on the plane. The change in James Washington's voice was instantaneous. The warm, loving father was gone, replaced by the CEO of Ascendia Global Airways, a man who commanded a fleet of 800 aircraft and 90,000 employees. His voice was ice. Where are you? And who is with you? I'm at gate B44 in the side office. I'm with the gate supervisor, Chloe Martinez. The purser, a man named Mark. He and a passenger accused me of stealing a bracelet. They called the police and escorted me off the flight. There was a dead, terrifying silence on the other end of the line. Stay right there, James said. Do not move. Give the phone to Miss Martinez. Serafina handed the phone to Chloe, whose hand was trembling slightly. Hello? Chloe listened. Her eyes went wide, her face drained of all color. She went from pale to ashen. Yes, sir, she whispered. Yes, Mr. Washington. I understand. Yes, sir. Immediately. I won't let her out of my sight. She hung up and stared at Serafina as if she were seeing a ghost. That was my father, Serafina said, wearily, wiping her eyes. He's in the building, Chloe stammered. He was supposed to be on a flight to Singapore. He's at the flagship first lounge. He's on his way. Outside the office, Officer O'Malley's radio crackled to life. All units at B44 stand by. Port Authority Director is en route. Do not, repeat, do not let the passenger from 1A leave the area. Awaiting arrival of Ascendia CEO. The officers stared at each other. Then they stared at the girl in the hoodie in the glass office. Suddenly, from down the concourse, there was a flurry of motion. Not just one man, but a phalanx. James Washington, tall, immaculate, in a 10,000 bespoke suit, was walking so fast his security detail and two panicked-looking suit-wearing executives were practically jogging to keep up. He wasn't just a man. He was a presence, an absolute force of gravity. He didn't slow down as he reached the gate. He strode straight past the police officers, pulled open the office door, and enveloped his daughter in a hug so tight she thought her ribs might crack. "Are you okay, baby?" he whispered, his voice thick with a rage she'd only heard twice in her life. "I'm okay, Dad. I'm so embarrassed." "You have nothing to be embarrassed about," he said, kissing the top of her head. He let her go and turned. His eyes, cold and black, landed on Chloe Martinez, who looked like she was about to faint. "Ms. Martinez," he said, his voice quiet but echoing with power. "Lock the manifest. Not one person gets on or off that plane. Tell the captain to hold at the gate. My daughter is getting back on her flight, and I," he said, his voice dropping, "am going to find out exactly what happened." The jet bridge was reattached to the aircraft with a solid thump. Inside the cabin, Mark was supervising the final cross-checks. "Okay, cabin crew, let's get this done. We're already 20 minutes behind, thanks to that situation." Mrs. Evelyn Reed was sipping her third glass of champagne. "You handled that so professionally, Mark," she said, loud enough for the cabin to hear. "It's a relief to know Ascendia takes the security of its real passengers seriously." "We do our best, Mrs. Reed," Mark said, with a self-satisfied smile. Just then, the fasten seatbelt sign, which had just been illuminated, switched off. The captain's voice came over the PA, but it sounded strained. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Miller. Apologies for the slight delay. We've been asked to hold at the gate for a moment by ground control. We should have more information for you shortly." Mark frowned. A ground hold after they'd been cleared? He walked to the front galley to call the gate. As he reached the front, the cabin door opened. Chloe Martinez, the gate agent, was standing there, her face sheet white. Beside her were the 2 police officers. "Chloe, what is this?" Mark snapped. "I gave the clear to close. You can't just—" "Shut up, Mark," Chloe whispered, her voice shaking. And then James Washington boarded the aircraft. He filled the doorway. He was a man who was used to commanding boardrooms, and the narrow fuselage of an A350 felt suddenly intensely small. He was followed by his head of security, the Port Authority director, and finally, Serafina. The entire first-class cabin gasped. Evelyn Reed, in the middle of a sip, choked on her champagne. Mark's blood turned to ice. His plastic smile evaporated, replaced by a mask of slack-jawed horror. He knew exactly who this was. Every employee had seen his picture in memos and quarterly reports. The man on the move, the visionary leader, the CEO. Mr. Washington," Mark stammered, frantically trying to straighten his tie. "Sir, this is an unexpected honor. We weren't aware you were traveling with us. I don't have you on the manifest." James Washington didn't look at him. He didn't look at anyone but the passengers. His eyes swept the cabin, cold and furious. "Good evening," he said. His voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the silence like a razor. "My name is James Washington. I am the Chief Executive Officer of this airline. And this," he said, putting a gentle hand on Serafina's shoulder, "is my daughter, Serafina Washington, an art student on her way to London for her first international exhibition." He paused, letting the information sink in. You could have heard a pin drop. She was, however, just forcibly removed from this aircraft, escorted by police, humiliated in front of you. He finally turned his gaze to Mark. It was not the gaze of a boss to an employee. It was the gaze of a predator. "You," he said. "Purser Mark, tell me what happened." Mark was visibly shaking. "Sir, there was a report from a passenger, a theft. I was following procedure." "Procedure?" James said, taking a step closer. Mark involuntarily flinched. Is it procedure to accuse a passenger of theft with zero evidence? Is it procedure to believe an accusation based on what? Her appearance? Is it procedure to call armed police on a 22-year-old girl who did nothing but sit in the seat she paid for? Mrs. Reed reported her diamond bracelet was stolen, Mark sputtered, desperate, pointing at Evelyn. She identified Miss Washington. She refused a bag search. It was disruptive. Evelyn Reed looked like she was having a heart attack. Her face was a mottled red. It was missing. I saw her. James Washington turned his attention to her. "Mrs. Evelyn Reed," he said, his voice dangerously soft. The executives behind him were taking notes. "You are a platinum member. You fly with us often. You accused my daughter of theft." I thought she... "Officers," James said, gesturing to the Port Authority police. "You are here for a reported theft. Let's solve it. I want a full search. I want every bag in this cabin searched. Mrs. Reed's bags first. Then Mr. Reed's. Then the overhead bins. Then, and only then, my daughter's." "You can't search my bags," Evelyn shrieked, clutching her Gucci tote. "Ma'am," Officer O'Malley said, his voice now steel. He finally understood what was happening. "You reported a crime. We are now investigating it. Hand over the bag." The search was meticulous and excruciating. The officers were thorough, joined by James's personal security, who were ex-federal agents. They were not playing. They started with Evelyn Reed's tote. She was forced to stand in the aisle as they emptied it onto her seat. A wallet, a bottle of Chanel No. 5, a silk eye mask, a copy of a trashy novel, a prescription bottle. Then they moved to her husband's briefcase. Arthur Reed looked mortified. "This is preposterous, James." "Mr. Washington, I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding." "I am sure it is not," James said, his arms crossed. They searched the overhead bin. They searched the seat-back pockets. Nothing. Mark, the purser, was watching this, and a small, hopeful look was creeping back into his eyes. If they didn't find it, then maybe he was justified. Maybe she did steal it and dump it. "There," Evelyn said, her voice high and shaky. "You see? It's not here. She must have it. Search her." James Washington looked at his daughter. "Sarah, your bag." With a deep breath, Seraphina handed her battered leather satchel to Officer O'Malley. He unzipped it. He pulled out 2 sketchbooks, a tin of charcoal pencils, an iPad, a copy of The Bluest Eye, a half-eaten bag of pretzels, and at the bottom, a small, velvet-lined pencil case. "What's that?" Evelyn snapped, pointing. "Open it." The officer opened it. It contained 3 sharpened pencils, an eraser, and a silver charm from her keychain. He zipped the bag shut. "It's clear." He handed it back to her. Then her other bag. Her roller." Evelyn was becoming unhinged. The officer took her carry-on and laid it flat. He unzipped it. It was full of neatly rolled hoodies, jeans, and a pair of sneakers. He unzipped every pocket. Nothing. The plane," Evelyn shrieked. "She must have hidden it, in the seat cushions, in the bathroom." "Ma'am, that's enough," the Port Authority director said, stepping forward. "There is no bracelet." But it's gone." Evelyn was crying real tears now, tears of panic. "It was worth over $100,000. I know I had it." "Perhaps," James Washington said, "you should check the bag you brought on the plane with your tote." Evelyn looked confused. "What? I only had my tote." "No," Seraphina said, speaking for the first time. Her voice was quiet, but it carried. Everyone turned to her. "You had your tote," she said, "and you had a shopping bag from the duty-free, a blue La Mer bag. You were complaining to your husband that they didn't have your preferred serum." Evelyn's eyes widened. Yes. She looked at her seat. 2B. Stuffed beside the cushion, shoved down in her haste to accuse Seraphina, was a small blue bag. Mark, seeing his last hope, dove for it. Is this it?" He pulled it out. He didn't even look inside. He just opened it. And at the bottom, gleaming under the cabin lights, nestled against a box of expensive face cream, was a diamond tennis bracelet. The silence that followed was so complete, it was deafening. Evelyn Reed saw it. She put her hand to her mouth, a small O escaping her lips. She hadn't been robbed. She hadn't been the victim. She had been careless. She had dropped her own bracelet into her own shopping bag, and, in her prejudiced haste, decided it was easier to blame the black girl in the hoodie than to check her own belongings. Mark stood frozen, holding the bag, the evidence of his own catastrophic failure. James Washington did not raise his voice. He didn't have to. "Mark," he said. The purser, shaking, looked up. "You are the lead purser on my flagship international flight. Your job is to ensure the safety and comfort of all passengers. You failed on both counts. You profiled a passenger. You allowed another passenger to bully her. And then you escalated a situation born of prejudice into a security incident. You brought armed police onto my plane to remove an innocent woman. Sir, I was following Mrs. Reed's report. I thought—" "You didn't think," James thundered, his voice finally rising, echoing through the cabin. "That's the problem. You reacted. You saw what you wanted to see. You saw a woman of color in a seat you didn't think she deserved, and you jumped at the chance to put her in her place. You are a disgrace to this uniform." James turned to his executive. "Mr. Davies, get his credentials. He is fired, effective immediately. I want him escorted from the airport. He is never to work for Ascendia Global or any of our partner airlines ever again." "Yes, Mr. Washington." Mark collapsed into the nearest jump seat, as if his legs had given out. "Please, sir, my career, it was a mistake." "It was not a mistake," James said, turning his back on him. "It was a choice. The cabin was a vacuum, all air and sound sucked out by the horrifying, gleaming presence of the bracelet in the La Mer bag." Mark stood frozen, his arm outstretched, holding the bag like a bomb. It was the physical evidence, not of Serafina's guilt, but of his own cataclysmic, career-ending failure. His entire body was vibrating, a low-frequency tremor of pure terror. Evelyn Reed saw it. She let out a small, strangled sound, like a dying bird. Oh my, it must have fallen." James Washington did not look at her. He did not look at the bracelet. He looked only at the purser. "Mark," he said. His voice was not loud. It was terrifyingly quiet, a blade of ice in the silent cabin. Mark's head snapped up. His eyes, wide and bloodshot, were pleading. "Sir, Mr. Washington, it was a mistake, a procedure. I was following procedure." "Procedure?" James repeated, taking a single slow step toward him. Mark flinched, pressing himself back against the galley wall. "Show me the procedure, Mark. Show me the page in the Ascendia Global Manual that tells you to side with an accusation, without evidence, based on a passenger's appearance. Show me the procedure for calling armed police to remove a ticketed, non-threatening, premium passenger from her paid-for seat." She was non-compliant," Mark stammered, his mind grasping for any piece of corporate jargon that could save him. She refused a bag search. That's a security indicator." "A bag search you had no right to demand," James countered, his voice slicing through Mark's defense. "A bag search she was constitutionally right to refuse. You weren't a security officer, Mark. You were a flight attendant, and you were on a power trip." "No, sir. Please, I have a 15-year unblemished record." I was thinking of the other passengers. Mrs. Reed, she's platinum. She was distressed." "And my daughter?" James said, his voice dropping even lower. "Was she not distressed? Was she not a passenger? Or did her status as a young black woman in a hoodie somehow negate her ticket? Did it negate her humanity?" Mark had no answer. He could only shake his head, tears of self-pity and fear welling in his eyes. "Please, sir. My job, it's my whole life." "It was your whole life," James corrected him. He turned his head slightly, his gaze finding the executive who had followed him on board. "Mr. Davies." Mr. Davies, a tall man in a dark suit, stepped forward, his face grim. "Sir, take Mr." James stopped and looked at the purser's name badge, as if seeing it for the first time. "Take Mark's airline credentials. Take his wing pin. Take his employer ID. He is to be escorted from this aircraft and from the airport. He is fired, effective, right now, with cause, gross misconduct, violation of company ethics, violation of Title VI of the Civil Rights Act." Each word was a hammer blow. Mark's legs gave out, and he slid down the wall into the galley jump seat, his face in his hands. No. No, please. I have a mortgage. I have. You had a responsibility, James said, his back to him. And you failed. You are a disgrace to this uniform. You are the poison I work every day to remove from this company. Mr. Davies, get him out of my sight and notify the FAA. I want his license reviewed. The finality of that order was absolute. Not just fired, blacklisted. His career in aviation, anywhere in the world, was over. Mr. Davies and one of the Port Authority officers quietly moved into the galley and lifted Mark to his feet. He was sobbing, a broken, pathetic sound, as they guided him toward the door. The passengers watched in stunned silence. The first domino had fallen. James Washington let the silence hang for a moment, letting the consequence sink in. Then he turned. His gaze, like a high-powered spotlight, swept past the other passengers and landed on Mr. and Mrs. Arthur Reed. Arthur Reed was already on his feet, his face a pale, sweaty mask of panic. He was a businessman. He understood damage control. He was trying to calculate the cost. James, Mr. Washington, sir, Arthur began, his voice oily and placating. He was trying for man to man, executive to executive. On behalf of my wife and myself, I want to offer our most profound apologies. To you and to your lovely daughter. He gestured to Seraphina, who just stared at him, her expression unreadable. Evelyn, Arthur hissed at his wife. Evelyn, apologize. Now. Evelyn Reed, her face a ruin of streaked mascara and mottled red and white splotches, looked up. The hatred in her eyes was still there, burning hotter than ever. This was all Seraphina's fault. But she was trapped. I am sorry, she said, the words sounding like they were being torn from her throat. I was distraught. I didn't know what I was saying. I'm so terribly sorry. Seraphina, it's a lovely name. The attempt at intimacy was grotesque. Seraphina said nothing. She didn't have to. Her father stepped into the aisle, directly in front of their seats. An apology, James mused, his voice dangerously soft. You were distraught. You didn't know what you were saying, and yet you knew enough to publicly accuse her. You knew enough to demand a search. You knew enough to have her marched off this plane like a common criminal. You, Mrs. Reed, you knew exactly what you were doing. You saw my daughter in the lounge, and you complained about her. You saw her in this seat, and you couldn't stand it. This mistake, he gestured to the bracelet, was just the excuse you were waiting for. That's not true, Evelyn shrieked, her facade of contrition cracking. I really thought it was gone. If she hadn't been so defiant, this all could have been avoided. The cabin gasped. Even Arthur looked at his wife in horror. She had just, inexplicably, blamed the victim again. James Washington actually smiled. It was the most terrifying expression anyone on that plane had ever seen. Defiant, he repeated. Yes, she was. Thank God for that. James, please, Arthur begged, grabbing his wife's arm to silence her. My wife, she's not herself. This is a trauma. Please, we'll do anything. We'll compensate Seraphina. A gift for her trouble. We can sort this out. I'm Arthur Reed, of Reed Logistics. He said the name with a pathetic, desperate flourish. He was playing his last and only card. He was trying to signal that he, too, was a man of importance, a man of wealth, a member of the same club as James Washington. It was the single greatest miscalculation of his life. James Washington's head tilted. He held up a hand. Wait! Stop! Say that again! Arthur blinked, a tiny, foolish seed of hope sprouting. Arthur Reed, Reed Logistics. We're a major ground handling and cargo corporation. Reed Logistics, James said, tasting the name. R.L. Reed. Of course, you're pitching us. You're pitching Ascendia, the new North American cargo handling contract. A $200 million contract. Arthur Reed's blood stopped. He was staring at the man who wasn't just on the board. He was the board. The man who held the fate of his entire company in his hands. Yes, Arthur whispered, his voice trembling. Yes, that's me. That's my company. We've been working on the proposal for 6 months. Our entire team. It's the future of our company. I'm supposed to meet with your procurement board. Well, with you, sir. Next Tuesday. 10 a.m. The silence that fell was absolute. It was a black hole. Arthur Reed, in his attempt to save himself, had just handed James Washington the axe. James looked at Arthur. He looked at Evelyn. And he let them hang in that silence for a full, agonizing 10 seconds. He let them feel the weight of what was about to happen. "Mr. Davies," James called out. Mr. Davies, having just returned from dispatching Mark, was at his shoulder instantly. "Yes, Mr. Washington. My 10 a.m. meeting, next Tuesday, with Mr. Arthur Reed of Reed Logistics. Sir, it's cancelled." Arthur Reed let out a sound, a high, keening noise, as if he'd been stabbed. "No, James. Mr. Washington, please, you can't. This has nothing to do with business. This is a personal matter. My wife's mistake. It's not related." "Not related?" James spun on him, his voice finally rising to a righteous, echoing thunder that filled the aircraft. "Not related? You think your character isn't related to your business? You think your judgment isn't related to your business? You think I would entrust $200 million of my company's cargo to a man who, when faced with a minor inconvenience, allows his wife to publicly, racially, and maliciously profile an innocent woman? You think I would partner with a man who, instead of stopping it, instead of checking his own damn bag, stood by and watched her be humiliated? You, Mr. Reed, have shown me exactly who you are. Your judgment is flawed. Your character is weak, and I would not trust you to handle a single package for this airline. Please." Arthur was openly weeping now, his face collapsing. "It's my father's company. It will ruin us. Please." "It's already done, Mr. Reed. And Mr. Davies." "Sir, make a note. We are activating the Ethics and Integrity Clause in all pending vendor RFPs. Reed Logistics is to be permanently disqualified from this and all future contracts with Ascendia Global and all our subsidiaries. Inform our partners at SkyTeam. I want a full review of his existing contracts at every airport we service. I want to know who we've been in business with." This was it. The hard karma. It wasn't just a cancelled meeting. It was corporate annihilation. James Washington was salting the earth of his entire professional life. You bastard!" Evelyn shrieked, her terror finally turning to pure, unfiltered rage. She scrambled to her feet, her hands clawed. "You can't do this. We'll sue you. We'll sue this whole airline. I'll go to the media. I'll tell everyone how you abuse your power, how you bully your customers." James Washington looked at her, his expression one of almost pity. "You want to go to the media, Mrs. Reed? I invite you to. Please do. Tell them everything." He gestured to his head of security, who had been standing silently by the door. The man tapped the small camera on his lapel. "Tell the media how you falsely accused a passenger of theft," James continued, his voice calm again. "Tell them how you lied to federal officers. Tell them how you dropped your own bracelet in your own bag and tried to send a 22-year-old girl to jail for it. Please, give them the full story. My security team's body cameras have been rolling since we left the lounge, as has the primary jet bridge camera, and, I'm sure, he gestured to the cabin, several of your fellow passengers. He was right. Across the aisle, a man in business class slowly, shamelessly, lowered the phone he had been recording with. Evelyn Reed saw the phone. She saw the camera. She saw the cold, disgusted stares of every other passenger. She wasn't a victim. She wasn't a powerful wife. She was a meme, a Karen, a villain in a story that would be all over the internet by the time they landed. She crumpled. All the fight, all the venom, just evaporated, leaving a hollow, sobbing shell. "Now," James Washington said, his voice all business, "we have a plane to fly." He turned to the gate agent, Chloe, who was watching from the door, her eyes wide. "Ms. Martinez, what is the status of passengers 2B and 2C? Chloe, snapping to attention, checked her monitor. "They are Platinum Executive, sir, our highest revenue tier." "Revoke it," James said simply, "effective immediately. And their A Advantage miles, all 1.2 million of them. Freeze the account. We'll be liquidating them. The full monetary value will be donated to the NAACP Legal Defense Fund in Serafina Washington's name." This was a new, fresh hell for Evelyn. The status she had wielded like a weapon, the very thing she'd used to intimidate Mark, was gone. "And finally," James said, "they are not flying to London. Not tonight. Not on this plane. Not on any of my planes." You're kicking us off?" Arthur whispered, aghast. "Officers," James said, turning to the Port Authority police, who had been watching the entire drama with a kind of grim satisfaction. "These passengers, Mr. and Mrs. Reed, have filed a false report. They have maliciously interfered with a flight crew. They are a security risk. I am, as the CEO of this airline, and as the final authority on this aircraft, refusing them transport. Please escort them back to the terminal." The officers didn't hesitate. They had their new orders. "Mr. Reed, Mrs. Reed," Officer O'Malley said, his voice now devoid of any of its earlier tiredness. It was pure, cold steel. "Please grab your belongings. You're coming with us." No. My bag," Evelyn whimpered, but the officers were already pulling their luggage from the overhead bin. "Move," the second officer said. The humiliation was absolute. The walk of shame. They were marched, one in front of the other, down the first-class aisle, past Serafina, past the man who filmed them, past the entire cabin of people who had witnessed their bigotry and their downfall. The thump, thump, thump of their designer roller bags on the carpet was the only sound. As they passed Serafina in 1A, Evelyn shot her one last look. It was a look of pure, curdled poison. A look that said, "You did this to me." Serafina just met her gaze. She didn't flinch. She just held it, her expression one of profound, weary, and righteous sadness. The Reeds were marched off the plane. The jet bridge door was sealed, this time for good. The cabin was silent. James Washington took a deep, cleansing breath. He turned to the remaining, shell-shocked passengers. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his powerful voice filling the space. "On behalf of Ascendia Global Airways, I offer my deepest, most profound apologies. Not just for the delay, but for what you were forced to witness. What happened here tonight, this is not who we are. This is not the company I have spent my life building. Discrimination, prejudice, and profiling, whether it comes from a wealthy passenger or from my own staff, is a poison. And I will not tolerate it on my airline. Not now. Not ever." He turned to the remaining flight crew, who were clustered in the galley, looking terrified. "A new purser will meet this flight in London. But I want every single one of you to remember this. You see this happen. You see anything like this happen. You do not stand by. You speak up. I don't care if it's a platinum passenger, a fellow employee, or me. Your first job, your only job, is to protect the innocent. You protect your passengers. All of them. We are clear?" "Yes, Mr. Washington," they chorused, their voices shaking. Finally he turned to his daughter. The CEO mask dissolved, and he was just a father. His eyes were soft and full of a pain that only a parent can know. "Sarah," he said, his voice thick. "I'm okay, Dad," she whispered. He strode to her seat and pulled her into a hug, burying his face in her hair. "I'm so sorry, baby. I'm so sorry I let you fly anonymous. I wanted you to be normal. I forgot the world doesn't always let you be." "It's okay, Dad. You came. I will always come," he said, kissing the top of her head. He let her go and stepped back. "I have a plane to Singapore to catch. But you, seat 1A is yours. Go to London. Dazzle them with your art. Call me when you land." "I love you, Dad. I love you more." James Washington gave one last, powerful look around the cabin, nodded to the captain in the cockpit, and then he, too, deplaned. As the plane finally pushed back from the gate and the engine spooled up with a powerful whine, the man in 1B, the one who had been silent, the lawyer, leaned over to Serafina. "Miss Washington," he said, his voice quiet and choked with shame. I have to apologize to you. I'm a lawyer, a litigator. I knew what they were doing was wrong. I knew it was illegal. I should have said something. I should have objected. I froze. I didn't want to get involved. And I watched. I was a bystander. And I am deeply, profoundly sorry." Serafina looked at him. She was quiet for a long moment, the engine noise filling the silence. Then she gave him a small, sad, but forgiving smile. She reached into her battered satchel and pulled out her sketchbook. She opened it, not to a fresh page, but to the sketch she had been working on of the clouds. She picked up a charcoal pencil. "It's easy to see the ugly in the world," she said quietly, her eyes on her paper. "It's harder to step into the picture and try to fix it. I'm just glad my dad was willing to tear up the canvas and start over." She touched the pencil to the page, and as the A350 thundered down the runway and lifted, weightless, into the night sky, she began to draw. She was free. What you just witnessed was more than a mistake. It was a choice rooted in prejudice. Evelyn Reed and Purser Mark made a choice to see a young black woman as a threat, and they paid the ultimate price. The hard karma hit back, and their world was dismantled in an instant. But how many times does this happen when the CEO isn't your father? How many innocent people are shamed, removed, or arrested because no one with power steps in? This story is a reminder that silence is complicity. If you see prejudice, speak up. You might just be the one person who can stop a life from being ruined. What would you have done if you were a passenger in that cabin? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, please hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. And make sure you subscribe to the channel for more true life stories of drama and sweet, hard karma.